Samsung Unpacked has come and gone, but it left behind some really cool devices. ZDNet's Matt Miller and Jason Cipriani were actually able to get their hands on the new S22 Ultra and the new S22 Plus. So we're here with a little bit of a hands-on review. You guys have had it for a little bit. I want to know what the differences are, what the specs are, what the price point is. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear about your firsthand experience. Matt, the Ultra was really anticipated with that S Pen. Let's go ahead and start with you. Tell me about some of the specs for that Ultra.
Sure. This is first Samsung with the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor inside. 6.8-inch display. Of course, it's, beautiful Super AMOLED with the 120 hertz refresh rate. And one thing about the Ultra, I'll let Jason speak to the Plus, but the Ultra does have the adaptive display. So 1 hertz up to 120 hertz, depending on what you're doing with it. Android 12, and there's 2 RAM options, 12 or 16. One thing on the Ultra is it goes from 128 gigabytes all the way up to a 1 terabyte option for the internal storage. This is often referred to as the new Note, but there is no micro SD card, which was something we used to see on the Note devices. So it's internal options only. The cameras, I call this the spider lenses. They look like spider eyes or something to me. There's plenty of them on the back. The hardware is the same as we saw on the S21 Ultra, but the software has been enhanced as far as the cameras goes, but the same camera hardware, so nothing spectacular there with a change. And then all the same things, IP68, a 5,000 milliampere battery. And then one thing that's interesting is there's a lot of colors this year. And, I have the Phantom Black, the boring color, right? And then there's Phantom White, green, and burgundy. But then also, if you go to Samsung.com, you can get a graphite, sky blue, and a red one. And I don't know if you've seen those colors online, but they're pretty cool looking.
I love when there's a lot of colors. And speaking of colors, Jason, your S22 Plus is it's not the boring black. What do you got? Tell us about your specs.
Yeah, so I have the pink gold S22 Plus. If the camera will focus, there we go. And it looks more pink than gold to me. And hey, I'm here for it. I like it. I actually like the design quite a bit on this. It has a 6.6-inch full HD plus display. It also caps out at 120 hertz refresh rate, and it's adaptive, but instead of going from 1 to 120 like the Ultra does that Matt has, it goes from 48 to 120 based on what you're doing. Now, Samsung originally sent out spec sheets before the announcement that said it went from 10 to 120 hertz. They got caught with that little mix up there, so they corrected it eventually. It is 48 to 120 hertz, which when you're scrolling and doing stuff like that, the refresh rate adjusts. And I'll talk about scrolling here in a minute on my phone, but it has the same Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, 8 gigs of RAM. There are no other options for it. It comes in 128 gig or 256 gigs of storage. If you hopped on the pre-order bargain or pre-order deals, yes, deals, that's the word I'm looking for, you actually got the 256 gigs of storage for the same price as the 128 gigs. So that was a nice little offer from Samsung. One thing with the S22 and S22 Plus this year is Samsung actually decreased the battery size for both models by 300 milliamp hours. And so the battery in the S22 Plus is 4,500 milliamp hours down from the S21 Plus, which had 4,800 milliamp hours. And I haven't seen a difference yet in battery life. It's still getting me through a full day. The camera setup is a little different this year. There are 3 lenses on this one. And there is a 12 megapixel ultra wide, which is the one that zooms back, so you don't have to step back yourself. There's a 50 megapixel wide camera and then a 10 megapixel telephoto lens. Last year, the telephoto lens was, I think, 64 megapixels, and the wide camera was around 12 megapixels, I believe. So switching from the telephoto to the main lens as a priority camera is something I'm here for because I don't take a lot of telephoto pictures. And then, it has all the color options and 5G, LTE, Bluetooth, all that stuff, that's a staple feature of any smartphone, flagship smartphone now.
You both touched a little bit on it. The spider eyes. There are all kinds of lenses on both of these devices. Pictures, cameras, videos, those are huge selling points anymore for your flagship smartphone. Matt, let's go ahead back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about those cameras? Have you tested them? Do you like them? Are they holding up to what Samsung said they would?
Yeah, and one thing Jason kind of touched on the different lenses and things. One thing I'll mention, and he mentioned telephoto, that is definitely a focus of the S22 Ultra because it has two telephoto cameras, one with a 3x optical, another one with a 10x optical. So those combine together to create some pretty impressive telephoto experiences. I have the iPhone 13 Pro Max in hand. I've been doing a lot of side-by-side comparison photos. The Samsung's typical Samsung, right? So they add a little bit more saturation. It's very pleasing results from the pictures. Apple might be a little bit more realistic of the scene that's in front of you, but it's appealing to people. People like Samsung's output a lot of times. And to be honest, for most situations, especially in decent lighting and things, it's parity in my opinion for the most part. In low light, Samsung is doing better. Sometimes I've taken some low light. Sometimes it's almost too light. I don't know how to really say that, but you say you're doing a night scene and, I did my neighbor's house and it was lit up really cool. Samsung showed me the grass and other things when actually I don't really want to see that. I kind of want to see the house stand out. So it almost captures too much in some regards. It does do one thing that's really cool is the moonshots are stunning. I don't understand. It was perfect timing, right? It was full moon out last week, and I looked up there. I'm like, okay, let's check this out. And I used the iPhone 13. It's just a round ball with white light all over. I couldn't tell what it was. It looked like a street light, right? And then I put the Samsung up, went to the full 100 super zoom, and just held it in my hand, and I was amazed by the results. Now, it's a very niche thing to take pictures of the moon. It has been confirmed that it's not doing a Huawei imposing a moon over what's going on. It is using AI technology and the camera lenses and taking multiple shots and combining them. So it is really the moon that you're seeing, and it's pretty stunning. One more thing on cameras I'll mention. I'm not sure on the S22 Plus, but the S22, I don't know if you can see, there is a hole punch center camera. And at first, the specs say an under display camera. Well, okay, almost, right? You can see it it's always there. It is under the display as far as the display glass, right? So the glass on top, there is no cutout for the front facing camera, but obviously there's a cutout in the visible display. So it's not their Z Fold 3 under display technology, which is okay because that camera is good for video calls, but not for pictures. This is a 40 megapixel shooter with a hole punch. It's kind of under display. It's under the glass, but not really the display.
Yeah, so same here. I think it's a play on words, right? Semantics, what we're going to call the front camera. Mine is the same way. It's not an under display camera. I have a Z Fold 3 as well. That is an under display camera. That's good. Maybe for video calling. It's decent, right? It's not that great. But this 10 megapixel shooter on this, to Matt's point, this is a typical Samsung camera. If you like the photos you get from a Samsung phone that are a little bit oversaturated, the colors pop a little bit more, they're very appealing to the eye. Everyone seems to like them, even in blind, tests or whatever. You're not going to be disappointed with the S22 Plus. I'm not sold on the telephoto stuff that Samsung has been pushing. So that's why I said I'm glad they switched to the 50 megapixel main camera. And I've got some great photos with that sensor just randomly in coffee shops or around the house or whatever. I have tested out the telephoto, which has 3 times optical zoom, and then it can go up to 30 digital. And I find that once you get over 10, like I took a picture of this llama from across the room in a coffee shop the other day. The llama at 30x looks almost cartoonish. The colors are a little off. It just doesn't look right. But you go to the 100x zoom and take a picture of the moon, and it's like you have a telescope that is, very expensive and can take high quality photos on the Ultra. So again, I don't use the telephoto stuff a whole lot, and that's why the zoom stuff just doesn't do it for me. But the main camera, the ultra wide, And even the 3x optical zoom look great just on everyday average photos.
One thing I'll mention too about the camera is I think the one that you're using, Jason, has more of that contour cut that we saw in the S21, kind of that same similar design. This one I was a little shocked at first because it doesn't
Yeah.
have, it's kind of a completely unusual camera array you set up in. And at first I was like, oh man, they're just kind of out there naked by themselves with no protection or anything. But most people will use a case anyway, and
Sure.
it's the performance that really matters. So
Yeah, I kind of like the little notch, the camera array notch, instead of being like yours, where it's just flat and there's no bump there. Although, just a couple years ago, we were complaining about camera bumps and camera arrays. So who knows, where it's going to end up going from here. Maybe in a couple years, flat will be back, and that's where we're at.
You never know what you're going to look back and think, oh man, I can't believe I hated that just 2 years ago, because now it's
Right.
I really like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of things you really like, Matt, I'm pretty sure I can guess what your favorite feature is going to be, but I'm going to have you tell me anyways. What is something about your devices respectively that you love? It's your favorite feature. You don't want to go without it in another device. Matt, go ahead.
yeah, this is an easy one for me, right?
Yeah.
It's a nice softball. It is obviously the S Pen, right? I mean, when the Z Fold 3 added the S Pen, I was all over that. I pre-ordered that sucker and couldn't wait. And I the only thing there is I want to see the next Z Fold with it integrated, and that's the nice thing, right? This is the S21 Ultra, but it's embedded, right? It's just a Note. It's a Note 22 or whatever we want to call it. Um, and the S Pen's been improved a little bit. It is a matte finish. And then the other ones that have colors do have some colors on the end and things. It's the Bluetooth with all the air actions, all of that kind of thing. It does seem to me that the Bluetooth part of the S Pen seems to last a bit longer with a battery life. I'm able to pull that out. And, I used to get warnings, charge up the S Pen, after a few minutes of use. Now I'm here, I'm scrolling on the train for half an hour, using the S Pen, and I don't get a battery warning. So it seems to be performing a little bit better there. So clearly the S Pen. One other thing that I kind of actually do like is the design elements of the S22 Ultra. It has a very flat bottom and a flat top, which is kind of nice. And I like, just as all notes before, a very flat surface to me. It just, it just feels good in the hand, which is great because you're holding it in one and using the S Pen with the other. So
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that you just said, Matt, kind of registered with me in that maybe the back of your phone is flat. The S22 Ultra is flat, so you can lay it on the surface and write without it wobbling. This camera bump on the S22 Plus phone wobbles. If I was going to try to write on that, that's going to be a little shaky experience. So maybe that's why Samsung went with the flat back. As for my favorite feature, honestly, this is just an upgrade of the S21. And there's not like a standout feature other than the design. I really like the design. It's a little bit flatter. The edges are still rounded. I don't know. This camera's having a struggle today with the shiny pink. But they're flatter this year, to me at least. And I really like holding this phone. It just is simple to hold, easy to use one-handed, even though it has a big screen, 6.6 inches, isn't small by any measure, And yeah, there's not like a flagship feature here that is like, oh my God, they added a bunch of stuff to the S22 Plus. It's just a solid upgrade from last year's model. And if you're coming from like the S20, this is a huge jump for you. And there's a lot of features there: the camera, the display, the refresh rate, all of that. I guess maybe the 45-watt fast charging if I have to pick something, because topping off your phone pretty fast if you have a compatible charger. Because remember, these don't come with chargers in the box anymore. And by the way, the Tab S8 doesn't come with a charger in the box either, which a huge tablet without a charger in the box is just mind-boggling. But the S22 Plus, S22 Ultra both support 45-watt fast charging with a compatible wall adapter. And I think that's an important feature to have.
I wonder if people that never use the S Pen, because there's a lot of people that don't care at all about the S Pen.
That'd be me.
Yeah, I mean, should they really even consider the Ultra? I mean, for $200 plus more, if you don't,
Yeah.
you're never going to use the S Pen, just go with the Plus, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. So I honestly, I think the S22 Plus is exactly that. It's priced at what, $1,000, $999. Before Samsung starts all of their promotions here in the next month, that will knock it down a couple $100, which is what they always do. I think it is the option for people who don't care about the S Pen. Why spend the extra $200 for a stylus you're not going to use? You'll probably knock it out at some point on accident and lose it, if we're being honest. And and it's just, like I said in my initial hands-on, it is a worthy alternative to the S22 Ultra for pretty much anyone that doesn't need the Note clone that is the new S22 Ultra.
Yeah, looking at the specs, I've not touched either device, but that was what I took away from it. You either wanted the S Pen or you didn't want the S Pen, and you saved a couple $100 because they're both really good phones. A couple more lenses on the Ultra than the Plus, but
yeah,
you're gonna save that money if you're not, because like you said, you're gonna lose it if it's not important to you. You're gonna leave it somewhere. It's gonna fall out. You're not gonna care about it, and there's going to be like a weird hole in your phone because there's not an S Pen anymore.
Right. You're not going to buy a replacement.
No, yeah. You just don't care.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you both testing out these devices. Thank you so much for the pictures, the hands-on experience. As always, we have links to their written reviews. You can see a little bit more of the specs in depth, what some further thoughts were on the device. And then as always, we have the devices linked down below to make it super easy for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to stick with ZDNet for all things Samsung and tech.